There are definitely Quintessons in Transformers Prime and the line continuity. They get the spotlight in Chapter 6 of the Covenant of Primus, which we are summarizing today, and Retribution, the third novel for Transformers Prime. The Quintessons arrived on Cybertron at the end of the Age of Origins, presenting themselves as gods who gave them the power to transform. The Cybertronians were amazed and ignorantly served them with pleasure. Now of course we know that the Quintessons are classically evil, but their control fast-forwarded development on Cybertron. For the first time, the populations were united. Everyone was very excited to have unlocked new forms and transformed for the first time. However, the bad intentions of the Quintessons were about to be revealed. The Quintessons have cockpits and spaces put into willing Cybertronians so that they would be their personal transports. Those who were not their partners became unknowing slaves, half of them mining and building structures whose purposes they did not know, and the other half was taken off-world, apparently to build ports, but what actually happened to them is dubious. Under Quintesson rule, the old Cybertronian criminal gangs ceased being a problem with a new organized police force based in Iacon. If you remember that the original Wreckers were vigilantes who fought gangs, you'll know that they did not respect this new authority and were pushed to the edge of society. Law was new to Cybertronian society, and it was unacceptable to the Wreckers that their good guy status was being called lawbreaking. Everyone starts to fear Quintesson justice, however, as their cruelty comes out. Bots will be taken to Supreme Court for no good reason, a court that is more theatrics before they call you innocent and either imprison you for life or feed you to their ferocious Sharkticon robots. Now, Cybertronians are united in hatred against their masters, although these masters don't seem to notice because they are so confident in their control. Resistance begins small because of their fear, and they have to learn to talk discreetly or else face beatings. A few start forming their own underground resistance. However, Cybertronian collective submission is so powerful that it just might have an effect on the Allspark. My own theory being that this is from the memories of the deceased reuniting with it. Nowadays, new Cybertronians are being forged nameless, and with a rigid caste system established by the Quintessons, bots were literally born into jobs based on higher-up decisions. The Quintessons claimed that making a bot do what their bodies were best suited for would guarantee their happiness. But we all know how untrue that is when we take a look at Megatron, one of the nameless bots forged in the Age of Wrath. Yes, indeed, we get the story of Megatron's birth. He comes out with the innate knowledge that he is meant to be a miner. That is the only option for him, and he feels compelled to accept it. But Megatron is born at sunrise, and he is for a moment completely beguiled by the sun. He loved the light so much that he realizes he does not actually belong in the underground darkness. With a heavy spark, Megatron sends himself into the mines, but decides that he is going to come back to the light one day. He's filled with more passion than the other miners who accepted their fates, which is why he will in the future be the one to rally the others. Meanwhile, the Quintessons create an elective position for Prime. Sentinel Zeta fills this role, and the picture they give him shows a full Transformers animated chin. The intention with establishing a Prime was to create a figurehead that gives a false impression that Cybertronians have political power. Sentinel is much more experienced than his Transformers animated version, for he used to be a fearsome and intelligent warrior who could turn the tide of any battle to his side's favor. Alpha Trion does not personally believe that the Quintessons rigged this election because anyone who won would have been obedient anyway. But Sentinel is too smart to be a puppet, and with his new power, he demands information about what the Cybertronians are being forced to create. When the Quintessons refuse to give that information, Sentinel creates a team of intelligence agents to figure out what those devious Quintessons were up to. Sentinel convinces Ultra Magnus to leave the Wreckers and work for him, but he cannot convince any other Wrecker because they have no respect for authority. Wheeljack himself responds harshly, believing Sentinel will just make them work for those Quintessons. But Ultra Magnus does his work gathering information, pretending to do crime surveys at big construction sites. What he's really doing is stealing and bringing items back to Sentinel's team of scientists. Orion Pax is part of the team, looking through the archives for any information about the Quintessons. The independent underground movement had already collected their own information, but they were hesitant to share it with the Quintesson established Prime, Sentinel. They believe Sentinel might actually be on the Quintesson's side. Shockwave is part of this underground resistance movement, and he was the one who managed to translate the Quintesson language. That was when Soundwave, serving Sentinel Prime's council, used his spying skills and stole Shockwave's notes. You'll also see the name Alita 1 as another council member, and this chapter is the only time she is ever mentioned, having no large role whatsoever and no relation to Optimus. Soundwave's retrieval of Shockwave's knowledge allows him to start translating Quintesson messages. Upon listening to them, Soundwave realizes that the Quintessons are talking about sales figures, profits, and that Cybertronians are being used just for free slave work. One day, a young engineer named Blue Streak and his close friend Prowl come to Sentinel Prime with highly important blueprints. They are frantically trying to relay the information they gathered, but no one can understand Blue Streak's technical babble. But Prowl finally does the clear talking and explains that the ring structures they have been forced to build are warp points, space bridges. The sneaky Quintessons intended to ship all the Cybertronians off-world without arousing their suspicion with large spaceships. Alphatron is stunned because only Vector Prime had known how to build space bridges, and Alphatron fears that somehow the Quintessons got their hands on his records. But Blue Streak points out that some of the Quintesson math is wrong, proving that the Quintessons don't fully understand because indeed, they stole the space bridge blueprints from someone else. But after discovering what the Quintessons intend to do, Sentinel tells the Council and the team that they will go to war against the Quintessons. But it could not be an open struggle. First, they needed to sway the submissive population and then take the Quintessons by surprise. They start recruiting strong fighters, and Orion Pax is quite useful at tracking down sympathizers. He gets Jazz, who then stealthily steals a Quintesson vehicle for them to examine before returning it. They are interested in seeing the offensive ability of the Quintesson machines for when they begin their violent pushback. But the Quintessons start hearing of the resistance through not well shielded rebel radio chatter. At their post on Cybertron, they start constructing an army of Sharktacons. Soundwave plays the Council audio of Sharktacon waves slaughtering resistance leaders, and horrified and angered, Sentinel decides that they have to unite Cybertron now by revealing the lies of the Quintessons. They activate Plan TCOG, which will disprove the Quintessons' god status. Getting the code, all the bots working near the Well of Allsparks zap the nearest Quintessons in the spines and take over. Wreckers move in to carry them away and imprison them. For the first time, with the Well all to themselves, they set up a camera and broadcast to all of Cybertron. The Doctors, Cogwheel, and Ratchet appear on TV and explain what they are going to do, and when the next bot is forged and comes out, they scan him to prove that all Cybertronians are made with TCOGs. The bot who was just forged is actually Silverbolt, future aerial bot. Cogwheel explains transformation to him. Then Silverbolt shyly admits that he had dreams of flying as he ascended. Then he instantly figures it out and transforms, zipping around and doing happy loops. And then Ratchet famously mutters to the camera in Ratchet fashion, "Gift of the Galactic Masters, my exhaust." They then show a few images of Sharktacon attacks to the world, and Sentinel rallies them by proclaiming that they have been used, deceived, and now slaughtered. The time has come to take up arms and rout the Quintessons from their world. What follows is the account of various battles against the Quintessons and their terrifying Sharktacon warriors. The Quintessons retreat from an area, then fire missiles and bomb civilians and workers with radioactive elements. Cybertronians retaliate and assault the Quintesson embassy, which explodes and kills the counterforce. In total, over 2,000 Cybertronians die in the first act of war. The Quintessons then send Sharktacon Pax to cut off transit routes and weaken their armies. Another record reports that the Quintessons gunned down a civilian medic convoy just to show you how evil these guys are. Next, the Quintessons plant toxic explosions in public areas and kill about 600. Wreckers and flight-capable Cybertronians, not called Seeker, but Cybertronian Air Recon, fight together to take out Quintesson ships. The battle is very heavy, and no civilians are assumed to have survived in the bombing areas. Then there is a record of success, when rebels take control of a ship and kill all the Quintessons, and examine them medically to confirm at least 3 types of Quintessons exist. 2 of them were new that they had never seen before, so they also wondered if the Quintessons had alien allies. Afraid that bots would be scared by the idea of Quintessons having allies, Orion Pax is sent out to tell everyone who knows to keep quiet. He is cute and trustworthy after all, with great media skills. Alpha Trion gives him Ultra Magnus as a guard, and little innocent Orion feels safe with him until they get attacked by Quintesson drones. Ultra Magnus yeets future Optimus to safety, and while Orion balls up in fear, Ultra Magnus brutalizes their aggressors. He continuously protects Orion Pax as they stumble upon groups of Sharkticons. Sharkticons have been sent out to loot and terrorize civilians trying to survive in remote areas. The Sharkticons even tried to pollute their oil tanks with fragzine, something terrible that corrodes Cybertronians to death in minutes. Ultra Magnus and Orion Pax fight on until they finish their lists and got everyone to swear to secrecy about the whole multiple aliens conspiracy. At last, they can go home to Iacon, and Ultra Magnus tells him a good job before also telling him, "Let's roll out." This seems to have told the story of how Ultra Magnus was a strong role model for meek Orion Pax, and that Optimus Prime was inspired long ago by him before one day growing strong enough to be his leader. It is also important to note that Alpha Trion sent him on this adventure so that Orion Pax, who he knows is the reincarnation of 13, could develop himself beyond the Hall of Records. The Cybertronians proved to be too powerful and determined, so the Quintessons retreat from Cybertron. Everyone celebrates their victory and freedom, burning Quintesson effigies, performing dramas, and beating drums. But after this, what now? Sentinel and his council are given credit for their victory, and they are given power. However, Cybertron is in desperate need of repair, and the fastest way to do it is for everyone to keep doing their jobs. At first they believe the caste system will be temporarily kept, but we all know that it will stay in place and the council will only gain more power. That is what will disgust Soundwave and cause him to leave the council before Orion Pax and Megatron give their speeches to them in the future. For now, Cybertronians are only filled with hope. The Wreckers and former criminal gangs are now tamed and become a rough military police force, and all the leftover space bridges are completed for themselves, and Cybertron is ready to reach the stars and see other planets. This excites Orion Pax so much that he cannot concentrate on work. Alpha Trion allows him to go see the first opening of a space bridge if he promises to stop labeling footage of Sharkticons as scary monsters and mixing up Shockwave and Soundwave in records. Orion Pax is both scared of other planets and aliens, and excited to see them if they are non-hostile. He imagines beautiful crystal places and delicate, pretty life forms, and it makes him realize how far he has come when he remembers life before civilization, when he survived under the terror of the Predacons. Orion dreams big and sees a future in the stars, and places for everyone to be what they want to be and matter. When Orion goes to see the space bridge opening, he wants to be by himself, away from the viewing stands, and get a great view. He struggles up a mountain just in time to see the beautiful portal open, a sight that swells sparks of hope. The Golden Age is about to start as Cybertronians explore the universe, establish colonies on uninhabited worlds, and trade resources. However, life for Megatron, D16, is going to go back to the way it was before. Now, with all the chapter summaries I've done so far, we have completed more than half of the lore book. The Covenant of Primus was published after Transformers Prime ended, and adds in all these details to make you look at Transformers Prime characters in a new light. You might have just gained some respect for Ultra Magnus, Orion Pax's hero. You might realize how adorable and weak Optimus used to be, and that Megatron as a new Cybertronian innocently loved the sun but felt banished to the darkness. Shockwave is more intelligent than we realized, a translator as well. Soundwave and Delta 1 were council members, and Sentinel was a badass and good guy before he became a coward in Exodus. Silverbolt gets a little attention at his birth, and Ratchet swears on live TV.